Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys checking today's video out. And guys, today we're going to be talking about hooks. We're going to sort of give you guys a foundation about the best, or not, like the best brands, but actually the best type of hook to use for different situations, because there are so many hooks on the market and so many different styles of hooks that I think it can be confusing if you're just really getting started out in fishing. So what I'm going to do is I'm sort of going to give you just some foundational advice on the type of hook you need to try, and the diameter and the size and that. So I think it's going to be some good information there. Okay guys, let's get into this a little bit. First of all, I want to try to keep this pretty basic, and I want to talk about the two main styles of hooks and sort of the applications for them. The first style of hook you have is this one here. This is called an EWG hook. Now the EWG stands for extra wide gap, and that wide gap is basically, it points out the distance between the top of the hook here and the bottom part of the shank here, the gap here. And also an EWG hook has what is called an offset bend right here. Now this bend that we talk about right here, this is designed to hold the plastic in place on a particular set of lure. So actually, let me get one out here. I'll show you guys real quick what I'm talking about. It's designed to keep the bait in place pretty good. So I'll rig it up real quick and show you what I'm talking about. When you rig an EWG hook up, the gap right here, this little bend is designed to set in there like this, and that keeps the hook in place really good right there, where you can just put it back inside the hook, inside the plastic, which is the way most people rig it. Now this is a really user-friendly type of a hook. Now guys, actually, I don't prefer this style of hook. The style of hook I prefer a little bit more is what is called a straight shank hook. Now, the straight shank hook is just like what you said. There's just a straight shank in it. There's no bend in it, and this is more of the traditional type hook, although there are, situations for both. Now, the times that I will use an EWG hook like this is a time when I'm using a little bit smaller bait, and I need maybe the bait to run or fall straight. Now, what I'm talking about is, say for example, on a creature bait like this bait is designed, you want it to fall like this, straight down. You don't want it to fall off like to its side or something like that, or on the side. It's designed to fall pretty much straight down. And one of the benefits about using the EWG hook, again, I'll rig it up, is the keel right here. Once you rig this up here, it sort of provides a little bit of a keel. You can see it keeps the bait straight, and sometimes it's a little bit easier to get the bait to fall straight on an EWG hook, because you can see just that center keel right there. Also, it's just more convenient. I mean, sometimes, when I don't want to mess with rigging up a straight shank hook quite as good, I will go to an EWG. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't get away with it, because you can get away with using nothing but EWG hooks. But one of the reasons that I use a straight shank a little bit more is I feel like you get better hookups. Now, I'm not talking about a big difference. I'm talking about, let's say for example, you get 50 bites. Say you're flipping this Z-Hog here and you get 50 bites on it using an EWG hook. Let's say you're gonna land 40 of those. Whereas if you use a straight shank hook on the same bait, you may land 45 of those fish. I just think that the landing percentage, for whatever reason, it has to do with the bite gap and just, the mechanics of the bait inside the fish's mouth. You just get a little bit better hookup with that. Now, the straight shank hook is the one that I use most of the time for about anything that I use. And it's a little bit more, it's not quite as user-friendly, because you sort of have to work with a little bit to get it right. But the straight shank hook usually has a keeper on it here. This is called a Gamakatsu G Finesse. So you run the bait up to where the keeper comes out, and that way that keeper locks it in position there. Now, at this point, it's a little bit more difficult as far as to get the hook back in the bait and make it look right and sit right, because what a lot of people do is they just stick it back in the center like that, in the middle. Now, the problem with this that you don't have with an EWG hook, and I'll show you, is look how much plastic you have to penetrate there. When you set that hook, you've got to penetrate all through that plastic. Whereas if you use the EWG hook, like this, let me rig it up and show you. The hook is actually all the way through the bait and sits on the back side of it, like this. So it's designed to set flush in that hook right there. So the hook point is already through the plastic. So from that standpoint, you don't have to set the hook quite as hard. But there are some things you can do to get around that. Let's get back to this. One of the things that I like to do with this is when I rig a straight shank hook, I come all the way through the bait with the straight shank like that, and then I'll just put it back inside just a little bit. I'll just tuck it back in there. I don't know if you can see that, but I bring it all the way out, and I try to put the hook point back in just a little bit of the plastic, and it remains weedless like that. So, and a lot of times it'll come out and you have to redo it. So it's not quite as user friendly with that. But the main thing that you want to do when you're choosing a hook like this to use, whether you choose the straight shank or the EWG, you just have to match the right size of hook to the plastic. And the way that you do that is you don't want a hook that stands out too much, yet you don't want a hook that's too small that you can't hook the fish. So there's a little bit of a learning curve as far as the size of the soft plastic bait you use in relationship to the hook. In general, guys, you'll do a lot better if you stay with a little bit smaller hook, because a smaller hook has a little bit smaller diameter, and that smaller diameter allows for better penetration. But you basically, when you're looking at your bait, and let me rig this up again so I'll show you what I'm talking about. When you're looking at your bait, you want to notice that this hook just doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Now, let me rig two different sizes in here and I'll show you what I'm talking about, the same bait. Here's like I said, this is like a 1/0 hook in a Z-Crawl Junior. And you can see how that hook, it's not too obtrusive, it sort of blends in there with it. Now let's take the same hook and let's put like a 4/0 hook in it, which is a fairly large hook, and I'll show you the difference. So from this standpoint, look at the difference the 4/0 hook has in there. See how big that hook is versus the 1/0 hook? Now, obviously people are gonna say, well, I want the bigger hook because I'm gonna hook the fish better. The first thing you have to do is you gotta get the fish to bite. And when you got a big old honking piece of metal on the outside of the hook there versus like a smaller piece, you're gonna get a lot more strikes and a lot more opportunities, using a little bit smaller hook. So a lot of it, guys, it's just, it's experimentation a little bit, and it's getting comfortable with what you like to do. And whether you choose a straight shank hook or an EWG, a lot of it is just preference. I mean, they're both good hooks. I'm not saying one is like bad and the other one's good. It's just a matter of preference and sort of fine tuning what you're comfortable with there. Again, overall, the EWG hook is going to be more user friendly. It's not going to be quite as effective, but it is easy to use. And the straight shank hook is probably for a little bit more of an advanced angler as far as knowing how to tweak and rig that thing just right and having to mess with it constantly in order to keep it looking good and in place. So anyway, hope it helps out. We'll talk later.